Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich, seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence. Miss Taylor married. Emma recalled her past kindness of 16 years, how she had taught and played with her from 5 years old. The wedding over and the bride people gone, her father and herself were left together, but it was impossible for him not to say exactly as he had said at dinner, such as, "Poor Miss Taylor, I wish she were here again. What a pity it is that Mr. Weston ever thought of her." Emma could not agree with him. Mr. Woodhouse wished she would not make matches. Mr. Knightley was one of the few people who could see faults in Emma, and the only one who ever told her of them. She promised to make none for herself, only one more for Mr. Elton. She must look about for a wife for him. The acquaintance Harriet had already formed was unworthy of her. They were a family of the name of Martin. Emma told Harriet that a woman is not to marry a man merely because she is asked and he can write a tolerable letter. Harriet Smith was a very pretty girl, and her beauty happened to be of a sort which Emma admired. She was fair, with blue eyes, light hair, and a look of great sweetness. Emma was quite convinced of Mr. Elton's being in the fairest way of falling in love. He talked of Harriet and praised her so warmly. Mr. Elton never thought of Miss Smith. He adored Emma. To restrain Mr. Elton, she cried, "No, sir, I am very sorry you have any feelings for me." Mr. Frank Churchill and Miss Woodhouse flirted together excessively. Mr. Knightley, who for some reason, best known to himself, had certainly taken an early dislike to Frank Churchill, was only growing to dislike him more. "You speak as if you envy him. He is the object to my envy." "Mr. Knightley and Jane Fairfax, how could one think of such a thing?" "I know how highly you think of Jane Fairfax," said Emma. "Jane Fairfax is a very charming young woman, but not even Jane Fairfax is perfect." Emma could not but rejoice to hear that she had a fault. "My dearest, most beloved Emma, if I loved you less, I might be able to talk about it more. I only asked to hear, once, your voice." She realized Mr. Knightley should marry no one but herself. "Mr. Knightley, if I have not spoken, it is because I'm afraid I will wake myself from this dream." Poor Harriet was in a flutter of spirits which required attentions of every kind that Emma could give. Harriet Smith marries Robert Martin. Mrs. Weston was to be the mother of a little girl, and with a much more voluntary, cheerful consent than Emma had ever presumed to hope for, she was able to fix her wedding day. The small band of true friends who witnessed the ceremony were fully answered in the perfect happiness of the union.
Emma by Jane Austen was written in 1816. History lesson. Emma takes place during the same time it was written, the early 1800s. This is the last book Jane Austen published before her death in 1817. In the book, marriage was decided by social status, reputations, and money. Many of the characters in Emma are based on people in Jane Austen's life. Mr. Weston and his deceased wife, Miss Churchill, resemble Austen's own parents who married from different social classes. Her brother George was raised by a different family, much like Frank Churchill. Emma possesses similar qualities to Jane Austen herself. They are both independent from men for most of their lives. They live out their adulthood under their parents' roof. Social issues and questions tackled throughout the book. Are marriages built on social class and wealth the only way a person can have a healthy marriage? Can women be independent from men? Critical analysis. Critical approach number 1, feminist. Emma contests for power and control throughout matchmaking. During this time, women usually did not have power or control. It was assumed that women could not be independent during this time. However, Emma claims that she will never be married for most of the book. But in the end, she does get married. Feminist questions. To what extent does the representation of women and men in the work reflect the place and time in which the work was written? This book was written in the early 1800s, where women did not have much power. How are relationships between men and women presented in the work? All men and women have to get married. Women cannot be independent, and men are expected to take care of them. Does the author present the work from within a predominantly male or female sensibility? The work is predominantly female because Emma is telling the story. Critical approach number 2, historical. Emma's basis for matchmaking, social class, reflects the ideas and attitudes of the time in which the book was written. Although Emma was a woman, she still did have some power because of her social status. She was rich, and therefore her opinion mattered. Historical questions. When was the work written? The early 1800s. What kinds of power relations does the work describe, reflect, or embody? Men are always powerful in relationships.